But before that, let's take a quick recap of what we have learned in the previous session. Okay, so in the previous session, we learned about locators, specifically learned about XPath, the different types of XPath, and we also learned how to use the absolute XPath when we want to perform automation testing. Okay, coming to today's session, we'll continue with the locators concept where we'll look into the relative XPath locator and we'll learn how to use it. Okay, and for the scope of this session, we'll try to test the login and homepage functionality of our application using the relative XPath locator. And so as usual, we'll have a test scenario for that. That is, we'll have a step-by-step plan to perform our automation testing, right? So we'll first open the Chrome browser, we'll launch the Chrome browser, then we'll navigate to the login page, then we'll enter the username and password, then we'll click on the login button. And if we are successfully logged in, we should be able to see the homepage of the application, right? And for our case this time, we will go a couple of steps further, and on the homepage, we'll try to locate and click on the shop now button where we should be able to redirect to the products page, and finally we should be able to validate the display of products. Okay, so if you think about it, if we do these steps manually, what we'll be doing is we'll be visually, like with our eyes, we'll be looking at the elements, we'll interact with them like clicking on the text box or typing the username and password or submitting a particular form and so on and so forth. But when you want to automate this process, we will need to explicitly tell our program which particular element to find, where exactly you can find it, and how our program can interact with those elements like that. Right? So the first important thing that we should tell our program is where to find and how to locate a particular element, right? And for that, we need to know, like we remember that we can use the locators concept, right? And there are various types of locators available, like we have the ID locators, class name, link text, and so on. So we will be using the XPath locator in our case. And to give you a brief overview of it, XPath is a locator in Selenium, which is used to accurately locate the web elements based on their attributes, based on their positions, or based on the text content they have. Okay, and XPath basically means XML path language. It is commonly used to locate elements within the DOM structure. Okay, you can think of it as a language that helps us navigate and search for different or specific elements within the HTML DOM. Okay, so when it comes to using the XPath in Selenium, there are a couple of commonly used approaches for locating elements. We have seen about the absolute XPath. We'll talk about the relative XPath. There is XPath access and XPath functions as well. Okay, so in this session, we'll be talking about relative XPath only. Right? So in contrast to absolute XPath, relative XPath is used to locate the HTML or XML web elements based on their relationship with other elements. Okay, so in absolute XPath, we start from the root node, right? So instead of that, in relative XPath, we basically locate the HTML or web elements or XML web elements based on their relationship with any other kind of element altogether. Okay, and when it comes to the syntax of it, it always starts with a double slash, which basically means it can start to search from anywhere in the DOM structure. Okay, now if you remember, the absolute XPath used to start with a single slash, basically indicates that our entire path should start from the root node or the HTML node only. Okay, so a typical relative XPath syntax looks something like this. Okay, so it has double slash, which basically means it can start from anywhere in the DOM structure, and we'll mention the tag name, and in square brackets we'll mention @attribute, which is equal to whichever value of the attribute exists. Okay, so let's try to break it down and we'll try to understand this. All right, so this relative XPath expression is of two parts. Typically any kind of relative XPath expression will have two parts. We'll have the tag name and we'll have the condition based on which we need to select a particular element. Okay, the element or the tag name is mentioned with double slash, double slash symbol, and the condition is mentioned within square brackets. Okay, so if you look at it, the XPath syntax generally starts with a double slash. Okay, so basically when we use the double slash, it tells our program that it can start searching for a particular element from anywhere in the document. Okay, so let's take an example to understand this better. Let's say we have a web page with the HTML structure as shown over there. Okay, so we have a div element, basically a container element with the class name as parent, and this particular parent element is the top level element. Now it has two direct child paragraph elements and one nested div element. Okay, and this nested div element in turn, it has one more paragraph element whose ID is called grandchild1. Okay, now let's say our objective is to locate that grandchild paragraph element. Okay, so let's say we want to select the element, the paragraph element, which has the ID grandchild1. What we could do is we could use the relative XPath over here. And the syntax, as we know, is / tag name, and in the square brackets, we'll write the conditional. Okay. So here we need to select the paragraph tag. Okay, and that too by default we'll select all the paragraph elements, and out of them we'll try to find the element that we are exactly looking for using certain conditions, right? For that, because we want to identify all the paragraph elements in the DOM structure, we'll write / search for anywhere where the tag name is p, paragraph. Okay, and then you see in XPath the @attribute section basically represents the attribute name of a node. Okay, and earlier we saw that there are around 3 paragraph elements, and which one do we want to select? The paragraph element where the ID is grandchild1. Right? Okay. So in the conditional part of the relational XPath expression, the attribute value should be ID. So it will write @ID. Okay. Right. And the value of the attribute, that is the value of the ID attribute, is going to be assigned over here to the attribute accordingly. Okay. So on the whole, our XPath expression for that grandchild element would be /p, which basically tells the program to select all the paragraph elements. And then in the conditional part, in the square brackets, we are writing @ID. So we're selecting all the paragraph elements, locating all the paragraph elements, and we are setting ID as the attribute, and under that the ID value, wherever or whichever paragraph element has the ID value of a grandchild1, that will be identified specifically. Okay, so we have understood how the typical syntax of the relative XPath looks like. So what we'll do now is let's apply the concept and try locating the username, password, and other elements using relative XPath. Okay, right. And obviously to convert the manual testing steps into automation code, we can follow 3 essential steps, right? So we start off with project creation, where we create our project for our automation testing. Basically we'll be setting up the necessary dependencies, creating the necessary files, and so on and so forth, right? Then we'll convert, like once the project is ready, we'll convert each and every step of the manual testing process into code. Okay, and then after writing the automation code, we'll execute it and we'll observe the results. So these are the 3 fundamental steps that we need to follow. Okay, so let's start off with creating the project, and we'll set up our initial files altogether. Okay, right, let's go ahead and set up a new project altogether. So we'll open the IntelliJ IDEA, create a new project. All right, so under this, we know that we need to use the Maven project, and we need to ensure that the project SDK is set basically to the Java file that we have already downloaded. Okay, so let's click on next. And here the group ID, as usual, let's mention it as org-example. Okay, and the artifact ID could be login-test. Okay, so let's just simply name it as login-test. Okay, and next, let's call this project name as login test 3. Okay, so login test 3. All right, and then we'll click on finish, and a new project it gets created. It will look something like this. Okay, and if you click on the project tab, you'll be able to see all the files over here. Okay, now we need to configure our pom.xml file, the Maven file, and in addition to that, we also need to create a Java file as well. Okay, right, so what we'll do is let's navigate to the Java folder. Okay, under src test, and this is where we'll write our test files. Okay, so we'll click on new, go to Java class, and for this case, for our particular case, let's name it as login test only. Okay, right, so let's name it as login test. All right, so let's just click on OK, and this is where we have our Java file ready. All right, and we also know that we need to add specific dependencies over here in the pom.xml file. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just create a tag called as dependencies. Okay, and we need to add the relevant dependencies over here. For that, I'll navigate to the Maven repository, just copy the dependencies over here, right, and just we'll paste them over here so that our relevant dependencies are added over here. Okay, and to make sure that these particular changes are applied, we'll click on the refresh button in the Maven tab. Okay, right, so what this will basically do is we are basically telling Maven to download the selenium-java library to include it into our project. Okay, right, let's get back. So we created our new Java file, we connected the Maven to the Java JDK that we downloaded, configured the group ID, the artifact ID, we created a project called as login test. Okay, and you basically saw how our project looks like. Okay, so then we created a new Java file where we'll write our entire testing code all together. Okay, and this is how it looks like. So we also needed to configure the dependencies, the Selenium WebDriver and all. Okay, so we went to the pom.xml file, added the necessary dependencies, and we saved the changes all together. Okay, now we know that when we want to automate our testing scenario, we need to explicitly, very specifically tell our program program what exactly to do, which exact element to locate, and how to behave or act with it, right? So every step should be automated, okay? And in our test scenario, we obviously need to first and foremost open the Chrome browser, right? Okay, so for that, we need to set up the Chrome driver. And as we know, if we are doing it manually, we would manually locate the place where our Google Chrome file is, right? And then we'll manually go to it, we'll click on it, we'll start the web browser and so on, okay? But because we are trying to tell a program how to do that, we need to specifically tell it where exactly it can find the Chrome driver executable file, okay? And as we have discussed in the previous sessions also, we'll be able to use the system.setProperty method to tell our program where to find the Chrome driver executable, okay? And the code for that will be something like this. You'll create a main function or main method, and under that you'll write system.setProperty, where you'll set the web driver as a Chrome driver and you'll give it the path to the Chrome driver, okay? Let's try this out as well. So we'll just close the Maven tab. We'll go to login test Java. Okay. So in this particular login test application or login test test file, what we'll do is we'll create a main method first. Okay. So we'll write public static void main, and in that we need to mention string square brackets, and we'll just mention args, okay, arguments. So in this particular main method, this is where we are going to write our entire testing code, right? We already know about it. So what we'll do is let's set the particular path for the Chrome driver executable. Okay, so let's say Chrome driver path. All right, so we just need to write system.setProperty of what exactly are we going to set? We need to set the web driver to the Chrome driver, right? So we'll just write web driver dot Chrome dot driver, okay? And we need to mention the Chrome driver path over here as well. All right, so and how do we do that? We navigate to the exact location where exactly this particular path exists, and we'll just directly put it over here. All right, so let's just say we go to desktop, okay, and under this we have our Chrome driver executable over here. So right click, copy as path, we'll just paste it over here. Do not forget the semicolon, okay? And we know that there are certain extra characters that come into picture when we copy this particular path, okay? So we'll just remove these extra characters and we'll just simply click on save. Okay, let's get back. So we have basically added the system.setProperty method, okay, and then we navigated to the downloaded section, we copied the path and we added it into our code, and we have basically told our program where exactly it can look so that it can find the Chrome driver executable file. But then for the program to be able to actually open or execute the Chrome driver executable, we'll need to import two classes from the Selenium library. Okay, so we'll need the web driver class, which is an interface in Selenium. It basically represents a web browser and provides various methods so that we can interact with these web elements. Okay, and then we'll also need the Chrome driver class, which is specifically designed to automate the Chrome browser. Okay, so for us to be able to work with Selenium web driver and specifically the Chrome driver, we'll need to import these necessary classes. Okay, and as usual, we already know that we can simply write import space that class path so that we can actually import it into our particular code. Okay, and then to open the Chrome browser, we'll create a new instance called as driver. We'll write web driver space driver equal to new Chrome driver. All right, so the moment you execute this code, you should see an empty Chrome browser window open. Okay, right, let's try this out as well. So first of all, we need to import the relevant libraries or classes. All right, so what we'll do is we'll write import, right? So org dot openqa selenium, and under this we need the web driver class. So we'll just simply write web driver. Okay, so a really interesting thing about IDEs like this is the autocomplete feature. It automatically suggests you which element or which part you need to write. Okay, right. All right, so let's just write import org openqa selenium, and under this we need to import Chrome driver. All right, so basically what we are doing over here is we have told our program where exactly it can find the Chrome driver executable. Okay, and the next step is to ask it to open the Chrome driver executable, right? So we'll just simply write open Chrome driver. Okay, or else you can simply write open Chrome browser. Okay, right. So as part of this, what we need to do is we just need to define web driver equal to new Chrome driver. All right, so we basically create a new Chrome driver executable. All right, so let's just run the code and see what happens. Right, so you can see that the code has successfully executed and we have an empty Chrome browser window. Okay, right, let's close it and get back. All right, so we have successfully made our program to open a Chrome browser. Next, we just have to navigate to the login page through our program. Okay, and to do so, we'll use the get method, right? So you can simply mention the URL that we need to visit in the parentheses of the get method. And because we have already created the web driver instance, we can simply write driver.get of whichever URL we want to visit. Okay, let's try this out as well. So we already have the Chrome driver instance. Okay, we just need to navigate to the login page, right? Okay, so we can simply write driver.get of. We need to mention a string URL, right? So what we'll do is let's just close off this tab. We just need to copy this login page URL and we'll paste it in double quotes. Remember, you always need to mention a string over here. Okay, we'll just mention double quotes. We'll just quickly run the code. All right. And here you can see the browser opened and it navigated to the relevant login page altogether. Okay, let's get back. Now, so we have basically made our program open a Chrome browser instance and navigate to the web page. You see, when it comes to automation testing, you just need to remember this framework, right? See, whatever steps you do in the manual scenario, you're just automating the steps in a programmatical manner. And because we are dealing with the program over here, we just need to be extremely specific with the instructions that we give it, right? Simple. So now what would be the next step? It will be to automate the testing steps. And in this case, we need to locate the web elements using the relative XPath expressions. Okay, so let's start off with the username element first. So when you want to work with web elements, especially via Selenium WebDriver, we need some more libraries and classes to be included, right? In our case, we'll need the web element class to represent and interact with various web elements, and the by class, which provides various locator strategies so that we can find elements on a particular web page, right? So what we'll do is we'll import these classes first and then write our code to locate the username field and send a username called as Rahul, right? So in the manual scenario, we'll visually look for where the element is, we'll click on it, and then we'll type the word Rahul, right? So because we are automating this thing, we'll be doing this programmatically. Okay, let's try this out. So here we can see that we have basically told our browser to open a particular web page, right? And now because we want to interact with the elements on that web page, we'll need to import certain new classes altogether or libraries altogether. Okay, so we'll just simply write import space org OpenQA Selenium, and as part of Selenium, under Selenium, we need the web element class. Okay, right? Don't forget the semicolon. And we'll also import another particular library or a class called as by. Okay, so we'll just simply write org dot OpenQA Selenium, and we want the by class over here. Okay, now what is the next step? We navigated to the login page. We need to select or find the username input element, right? So we'll just write select the username element. Okay, and here what do we need to do? We'll just need the web element class called, and we'll create a new variable called as username element equal to, right? So what do we need to do? We need to ask our driver to find a particular single element by. And in our case, we are using the XPath over here. For now, let's just put question marks over here. We'll try to understand which XPath to use and all. Okay, right. So let's just put a semicolon over here. And then once we identify this particular element, we need to simply say username element dot send keys. We need to send a particular set of keys called as Rahul. Okay, right. So this is how it will look like. Now let's get back. And now, because in this case, we are using XPath as the locator, we need to specifically mention the exact XPath of our element, right? Okay, so how do we do that? We need to check out the XPath for the element, and we can do it in two ways. One, we can navigate to the element in the DOM, identify its tag or element type, and then write our relevant expression. Or we can also copy the XPath directly using the browser developer tools. Okay, for now, let's go in the manual approach altogether. Okay, let's try it out. Right, so here we are at this particular web page, right? So we need to right click. Let's say we want to talk about the username element altogether. Okay, so we'll just simply right click on it, click on inspect, and here you can see that the element tag is input, the type is text, ID equal to username. Okay, right? So we have basically seen the element we want, and the ID attribute for it is username. And how do we write the relative XPath expression? It will look something like this. So we need to have the input element, and we can search from anywhere in the DOM, right? So we'll just simply write /input, which basically means it will select all the input elements in the DOM structure. And what is the condition that we'll mention? We'll mention that @ID equal to username. Okay, so let's just copy this ID equal to username over here. So we are basically telling our program that from all the input elements in the DOM, I want to select the one where the ID attribute is username. Okay, so from all the input elements basically means /input, and the condition is mentioned in the square brackets, right? @ID equal to username. Okay, let's get back. So, and in the ID equal to username, the @ symbol indicates that we are referring to an attribute of the selected element. Okay, in this case, we are specifying that the value of the ID attribute should be equal to username. Okay, right. So let's apply this to our code as well, right? Let's go ahead and try it out. Okay, now, so we'll just simply go here, and here in the double quotes, we'll write, we know that we want to select all the input elements, and in the square brackets, the condition is that ID should be equal to username. All right. Now, if you observe over here, we see a red color. Right, so if you might have observed, we have used double quotes, and it gives a red color altogether. Okay, let's try to understand what exactly it is and how we can fix it. Okay, let's get back. Now, so if you use double quotes around username, it will cause a problem because our computer gets confused when it encounters a clash of double quotes altogether, right? Because the outer double quotes are used to define an entire string, but the inner double quotes are also used to enclose the value of the ID attribute in the XPath expression. Okay, this basically makes it very difficult for the computer to understand what exactly is the actual objective of the code, which element to select, and a lot of other things as well. Okay, to resolve this issue, we can either use single quotes or escape the inner double quotes with a backslash. Okay, right? And that is why we'll have to use the single quotes in our case, mentioning the ID attribute altogether. Okay, let's make that modification and see. All right. So here, if you observe, we have the double quotes over here and a double quotes over here, which basically makes this entire thing as a string and this entire thing as another string altogether. But we need to have this entire part as one unit. Okay. For that, what we'll do is instead of using double quotes, we'll just simply use single quotes, which basically means that this entire relative XPath expression is a single string. Okay. Right. So what we'll do is let's run this code, and do not forget about the semicolon. Okay. Let's run this code and see what happens. Right. So the browser opens, and here you can see that the username element has been selected properly and a text called as Rahul RAHUL has been sent. Okay. Right. Let's get back. And as usual, to run the code, we can right click on the file and we selected run and executed it. And we saw an empty browser window open. So what we have basically done is we told our program to go to a particular place in our system, run a file called as Chrome driver using the Java programming language. We located the element, username element using XPath. In our case, we used the relative XPath and made our program send the username, whichever text we wanted to send, to that particular field. Okay. Now that we have understood how relative XPath is written and how we can use it, let's do the same for the password web element using XPath. Okay. For this step as well, we'll have to follow a similar approach. We'll right click on the element. We'll look where exactly or what exactly is the ID attribute. And in our case, this time the relative XPath would be /input, and in the square brackets, the @ID value would be password. Okay. Right. So let's try this out and apply it to our case. Okay. Right. So let's just close this particular window. And if you see over here, the username would be Rahul, obviously, right? And this time the password has to be Rahul @2021. But in this case, if you look at it, we need to exactly identify the element. Okay. So this password is also an input type element and the ID is password. Okay. Right. So what we'll do is we'll do the same. We'll just replicate the step. Let's just copy paste this. And instead of username, we'll do the password. Okay. Right. So password. And instead of the username element, we'll have password element, where the driver.find element by XPath would be where the ID is also password. Okay, right? So as we have seen in the DOM, the ID is password, right? So we'll just write ID equal to password. And instead of username element, we'll send the password element. Okay, password element dot send keys is, we know the password is Rahul @2021, right? Okay, so we'll just simply write Rahul @2021, and let's see what happens when we run the code. So the browser opened and the username and password are sent to it. Okay, right? Let's get back. So we have successfully, sent the password, and this is how the output was shown. Now that we are done automating both the username and password input boxes, what is the next step? We just need to click on the login button and submit those details, right? For that, we'll need to first locate the button element using relative XPath. Okay. For that also, we'll follow the same approach. We'll go to the website, we'll right click on the element, select the inspect, and we'll try to find out what exactly identifies our button element. Okay. Let's do that. So now let's get to the React app that we have gone through, and we need to click on the login button, right? So let's just right click on it, inspect element, and here we can find out that the exact type of the element is button. Okay. And here we don't see any kind of ID over here, but we can see that the class name is login-button. Okay. So instead of @ID, this time we'll simply use type equal to subnet or class equal to login button. Okay. So we can use either of the attributes to specifically identify our relevant element altogether. Okay. So let's just add here, let's say click on the login button. Okay, so how do we identify the login button? We'll just write web element. This time we'll just name it as button element equal to driver dot, we are asking our Chrome driver to find an element by XPath, where the XPath basically is button. So this time instead of input, we'll write /button, which basically means find all the button elements where the condition is @. If you observe over here, we can see that the type is equal to submit. Okay, so we'll just use that particular string, and we'll just mention where the type equal to, in single quotes, it is submit. Okay, so let's just cross check, it's submit, and we have mentioned submit over here. That's good. And now what is the next step? We need to send a particular action to that button element altogether, right? So we'll just simply write button element dot submit off, right? So let's just correct it, submit off. All right, so once you submit it, we should be able to go to the login page altogether, or the home page altogether, right? Let's just run the code and see what happens. So this gets loaded, the username and password are sent, and the login button is clicked, and we are able to navigate to the home page altogether. Okay, right? Let's get back. So we located the button element, we identified its relative XPath, and we configured our code to locate the element using the relative XPath expression. Okay, and this is how our code looked like. Okay, and once executed, we could visually see that we have successfully navigated to the home page. But till now, we're basically done with first 4 steps, right? So we launched the Chrome browser, we navigated to the login page, we entered the username and password, we clicked on the login button. Next, we need to programmatically check, we need to automate the checking aspect to see if we have navigated to the correct page or not. And obviously, for that, we need to compare the page that is loaded with the URL of the page that is expected, right? So we are basically going to compare the URLs. And so in simple terms, we have an expected URL, the homepage URL. So we'll assign that to a string variable, right? We'll write string homepage URL equal to the homepage URL. Okay. And then we need to compare or get the URL after the login action is completed. So what we'll do is we'll put it in another string variable called as the current URL. And in this scenario, we'll need to use another WebDriver method called as get current URL. Okay. It'll retrieve the URL of the web page that is currently open, and then it'll put it into a particular string variable altogether, right? And now, if you remember, we know that when we navigate to a new page on a website, sometimes there can be a small delay in the web page getting fully loaded, right? This delay happens because the web page might contain certain elements like images, text, and other things that need to be downloaded and displayed properly, right? So we need to ensure that our program at least waits for some time so that the page can fully load, and then it will capture the current URL. Okay. To implement this delay, what we'll do is we'll import another class called as WebDriver wait. Okay, so let's write the required code for this first, and then we'll navigate, and then we'll see what to do next. Okay, right. So let's just close this, and as we know, we need to import certain other classes and libraries. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll write import org.openqa selenium, and under selenium we need the support classes where the UI classes are needed, and here we need to write the expected conditions class as well. Okay, right? So semicolon we have added. Okay, and then we need to import the WebDriver wait and duration classes as well. Okay, so let's just do that. Import org OpenQA selenium support classes, and under that we need to use the UI, and we'll use the WebDriver wait class altogether. Okay, and we'll also import the Java time duration class. Okay, so we'll just write Java time duration classes, and we'll just put semicolon over here. Okay, so now that we have imported all the relevant classes and methods and libraries basically, so let's just write the comparison statements altogether. Okay, right? So obviously we need to have the expected URL of the home page, right? So let's just write expected URL. Okay, here we need to just store the expected URL into a string. Okay, right? So let's say if we log in using this particular username and password, we'll be navigating to this URL, right? Let's copy that URL. Okay, now let's just create a string. Okay, right? So we'll just write string. Okay, and let's give it the name called as home page URL. Okay, equal to, in double quotes, this is the URL that we have copied. Okay, right? So we have defined the home page URL. Now we want our program to wait for a particular time before it actually captures the current URL. Okay, so for that, what we'll do is we'll ask it to wait basically, right? So let's just say wait for the expected URL to load. Okay, now we'll basically use the WebDriver wait class, right? So we'll just write WebDriver wait. Let's call it wait. We'll call the instance as wait. We'll create it as a new WebDriver wait scenario where we want the driver to wait, the driver in the sense the Chrome browser, to wait for a particular duration of seconds of 10. Okay, so we need to wait. We basically ask it to wait for 10 seconds, and when like up until what time or which condition should it wait for, right? We'll just ask it to wait until a particular conditions are met. Okay, so here the expected conditions method will be used. Okay, so whenever you are asking your program, you're basically telling that wait until so and so expected conditions are met. Okay, in this case the expected condition is that the URL should become homepage URL. Okay, that is exactly how it should wait. Either it will wait for 10 seconds or it will wait until the URL becomes homepage URL. Okay, and then once the wait action is done, we'll just get another we need to get the current URL, right? So get the current URL. Okay, right? So under this, what we need to do is we just need to create a variable and grab the current URL altogether. Okay, right? So what we'll do is we'll just write a string. Let's call it the current URL 1. Okay, current URL 1 equal to driver dot get current URL. Okay, right? So basically we're going to grab the current URL after waiting for a particular period of time. Okay, so let's just quickly summarize what we have done so far. We have imported the expected conditions class. We have imported the WebDriver wait class or method. We have also imported the duration method over here. Okay, and what we have done over here is we have defined the expected URL string homepage URL equal to something. Okay, and then we have asked we have basically told the program to wait for a particular duration. Okay, for that we have used a WebDriver wait class, created an instance called as wait, and we have this instance will basically tell our Chrome driver to wait for a duration of 10 seconds. Okay, right? And then we are asking it to either wait until those 10 seconds or wait until the expected conditions are met. And in this case, the expected condition is that the URL should become homepage URL. Okay, right? And then we have grabbed the current URL as well. Okay, let's get back. Now we have basically asked the program to wait for 10 seconds and it has grabbed the current URL. Okay, we just need to validate if the URL after the login action matches the expected URL, that is the home page, and if it matches, it means that the navigation was successful, else it failed, right? Okay, so let's write the code for that as well. So basically what we need to do is we need to write an if condition over here, right? So we'll just check if navigation is successful. Okay, now what we need to do over here is, yeah, an extra s over here. Okay, so we just need to write an if condition. If the current URL dot equals of the home page URL. So what is the condition we need to do? We need to write system dot out dot println navigation was successful, right? So let's say navigation to home page was successful. Okay, if this does not get successful, basically we need to write the else condition over here, right? So we'll just write else we'll just copy paste this system.out.println statement, and then we'll say instead of navigation was successful, we'll just simply say navigation failed. Okay, right? So let's just run the code and see if the navigation is successful or not. So the browser opened, we logged in. Visually, we can confirm that it has navigated to the home page. And here programmatically also, we are able to validate that the navigation to home page was successful. Okay, right. Let's get back. So we have successfully checked the current URL versus the expected URL. We basically configured a delay and the code executed successfully, right? So basically what we have done is we have confirmed programmatically that the home page is loaded successfully, right? The next step as per our testing scenario is to locate the shop now button and interact with it. Okay, so as usual for this as well, we'll need to create a new instance of an element and locate it using the relative XPath. Okay, so first let's write the necessary code altogether. Okay, so now we just need to write the code over here. Let's say, let's call it, find and click the shop now button. Okay, so find and click the shop now button. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we need to identify this particular element. So we have logged in, we see the home page altogether, and here we need to click the shop now button over here. Okay, right? So what we'll do is we'll call the web element class. Okay, web element. Let's call it the shop now button, right? So shop now button element equal to driver. We're asking the driver to find an element by its XPath, where we'll define the XPath. We'll figure out what exactly is the XPath, and then we need to click on this particular button, right? So we'll just write shop now button element dot click. Okay, right? So make sure you write the exact spelling. Okay, right? So obviously we need to find out the XPath for it, right? So how do we find it out? We need to navigate to the browser. We'll right click on this. We'll click on inspect element, and here we can see that it's a button where the type equal to button and the class is equal to shop-now-button. Okay, now if you look at it, it doesn't have an ID. We can use either the type or the class name over here, and in this case let's use the class name for it. Okay, now in this case, how would the relative XPath look like? /button, which selects all the buttons in the DOM, where the class name equal to shop-now-button, right? So if you observe over here, it's shop-now-button. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll add the same thing in our code and see if it works. Okay, right? So let's just say by XPath, we'll just simply write /, which basically tells our program to look everywhere for a button type element where the condition is @ we need the class equal to in single quotes, because it could clash with the double quotes out there. Okay, and for this case we'll just copy paste it, Control C and Control V over here. Okay, right? And then once we click on the shop now button, we should be taken to the product space, something like this, right? So let's automate it and let's see how it works. All right, so the browser opened, it logged in, we navigated to the home page, clicked on the shop now button, and here we can see that there are many products that have been loaded altogether. Okay, right? So let's get back. Right, so we wrote our code to locate the button, and we went to the browser DOM to locate the shop now button. We understood that it has a class name and not an ID, so we modified our relative XPath to look something like this, /button, which basically tells our program to locate all the button elements in the DOM. And based on a particular condition, we mentioned that we need to select the button whose class name is shop-now-button. Okay, and we were able to navigate to the products page because we have clicked on the shop now button. Okay, and as the next step, we need to validate this action as well, right? We are able to visually see that we have navigated to the products page, but we also need to programmatically check if we're able to redirect to the products page or not, right? For this as well, we'll need to compare the expected URL and the current URL as well. Okay, so the code will be something like this. We'll write a string products page URL equal to the products page URL. Okay, and then we need to get the URL after the navigation action is completed. Okay, so let's say we store this new current URL as current URL2. Okay, and as usual, we'll write string current URL2 equal to driver.get of current URL. Okay, and what was the condition? If the captured, the current URL matches the products page URL, we need to print that the navigation to products page was successful, right? Okay, let's try this out. So we'll just close this browser instance. Now what we have basically done is, till here we have successfully navigated to the products page altogether. Okay, now we need to have the expected products page URL, right? So obviously it's a string thing. Okay, so we'll just string, let's call it the products page URL, right? So products page URL equal to, in double quotes we need to mention the URL, and we'll just copy paste this URL into our string. Okay, so we have the expected products page URL, string, right? So it's a string type. Make sure that you use your spellings correctly. Okay, now we also need to get the current URL of the products page, right? So it's also another string method, right? Or a string variable. So we'll just write string, let's call it the current URL 2. Okay, so we'll just simply write current URL 2. Okay, so current URL 2 equal to in like we basically need to tell our Chrome browser, as in the driver instance, to get the current URL again and store it in the current URL 2. Okay, now the condition is yeah, you need to make sure that the spellings are correct. Current URL 2, right? So we need to check the validation, right? So we just need to check if the navigation to the products table was successful. All right, so for that we'll just need to write an if condition. So we'll write if what is the condition over here? If the current URL2 equals the products page URL. So we'll just simply write if in brackets. We'll just write if current URL2 dot equals the products page URL. Then the condition is that we'll just simply write system dot out dot println navigation to products page was successful. Okay, and if it doesn't print, it basically means that the test case has failed. Okay, right? So let's run this code. Let's see what happens. So the browser opens, the username and password are sent, logs in, and we navigate to the products page, and we can visually confirm it. And programmatically also, we were able to confirm that the homepage navigation was successful, the first if condition, and then the products page navigation was also successful. Okay, let's get back. So once we executed our code, we could see that the navigation was successful, and we also validated it programmatically, right? Now for the final step in our test scenario, we need to validate if the products are actually loaded in the open page or not, right? I mean, we were visually able to confirm it, but we need to programmatically confirm it, right? So let's first see how we can locate the elements and validate it manually. Okay, let's take a look at this. So in case if we were doing it, in a manual scenario, we were able to see these things loaded. But let's see how exactly it looks in the DOM as well. Okay, so let's say we click on this hair dryer, right click on this, we go to inspect, and under this we can see that it's a list element, right? So this particular product item is a list element where you have an image, the title, and all other things. Okay, so this particular item is a product item, as in it's a list item. Okay, and as you can see over here, we have multiple products loaded. Okay, so the first one is the hair dryer, the next one is the minifigures, and the next one is a lightweight tripod or something like that. Okay, and if you observe over here, every item, every product that is loaded over here, we can see that all of them have the same type, as in the same tag type, and they all have the same class name and attribute name as well. Okay, right? Let's get back. So the relative XPath for a single product item would be, we'll write /, and because it's a list item type, we'll just write the tag name over here as li, which basically means you're telling the program to select all the list items in the entire DOM structure, where the condition is @class, where the class name is equal to product-item, right? So that is, this expression will select all the list elements within the class attribute value having product item. Okay, and if you remember, we saw a list of products, right? And if the list is not empty, we can visually confirm that the products page is successfully loaded, right? So it's not like we have a single list item over there. We have a multiple products loaded, and together they are a list of products altogether, right? Okay, but sometimes, as we have understood already, some elements on a web page might not be immediately visible when the page loads, right? They might need some time to load, and we need to make sure that our program will wait for some time before actually checking if the products are loaded or not. Okay, right? So which class or method do we use to make our program wait? We use the wait method, right? And the syntax for this will be something like this: wait.until. We are basically asking our program to wait until the expected conditions are met. And in this case, the expected conditions method will need visibility of element located, this part, right? By XPath. We need to locate the elements by XPath, and we need to validate if those elements are visible. And if those elements are visible, it means that the expected condition is met. And until then, the program should wait. Okay, let's first write this down, and then we'll try to break it down and understand it better. Okay, right? So let's go to the IDE. And here we need to basically ask our program to wait until the elements are displayed, right? So we'll just write wait until, so we need a // over here, wait until the elements are displayed, right? So we basically need to wait until the products are loaded onto the DOM or not, right? Okay, so we'll just simply ask our program to wait until the expected conditions are met. Okay, so here we'll just write the expected conditions method in, and what condition are we looking for? So earlier we basically asked our program to wait until the URL matches a particular given value, right? So we need to ensure that the elements are visible, right? So visibility of all elements, right? So we need to use the visibility of elements located right? So we need to use visibility of elements located method, right? So here you can see it, and we are basically asking it to locate or identify whether the elements are located or not. Okay, and located by which particular condition? By XPath, where the XPath is like, we need to give the double quotes, right? We need to select all the list elements present in the entire DOM altogether, okay, based on a condition where class equal to, if you observe over here, the class is product hyphen item. Okay, so I've copied that, and in single quotes we'll just mention product hyphen item. Okay, and we'll just give it a semicolon over here. Okay, let's break it down and let's try to understand it. Okay, right. So we saw a new method in the code now. We have the visibility of element located method. So basically this method is provided by the expected conditions class in Selenium. Okay, so this visibility of element located method is commonly used in combination with the wait class or wait method for the visibility of an element on the web page. We're basically telling our program to wait until a particular element selected by this particular XPath is visible on the web page or not. Okay, right. So that being said, let's break down the syntax line by line. So this wait.until method is provided by the WebDriver wait class. Okay, so it waits for a certain condition to be met before proceeding with the further execution. In our case, we are asking our program to wait until the products are loaded. Okay, and how do we validate if the products are loaded or not? We use the expected conditions dot visibility of element located method. Okay, so this condition will check if a particular element that we specify using the relative XPath locator, it will check if the particular element located by a specific locator is visible on the web page DOM or not. Right? Visually, we'll be able to see with our naked eyes, but programmatically, we need to tell the program to wait until the elements are visible or not. Okay, and then we are locating all the elements which are of the list type and have the class name as product hyphen item. Okay, so once the element that we specify in the XPath expression becomes visible on the web page within the timeout period, the code execution will continue. Okay, right? So this code is useful, the one that we have written over here. It's useful when you want to wait for a particular element to appear on the page before performing any kind of actions or any kind of executions altogether. Right? So this approach basically helps us synchronize our test automation with the actual loading and rendering of elements on the web page. Okay, right? Now, if you remember, we saw that there's actually a list of products, right? There were multiple products that were loaded. Okay, and when checking manually, we can visually confirm that a list is loaded or not. But when it comes to actually automating it, we need to grab all the elements that match the relative XPath. We need to put them into a list or an array. And if the array is not empty, we should be able to validate that the products are loaded, right? Okay, so for this particular case, what we'll do is we'll need to have another interesting class called as java.util.list. Okay, let's write the code for this as well. Okay, so we need to import the java.util.list class. Okay, so we'll just write import java.util list, right? So we just need to use the list class over here. Okay, and now we know that if you observe over here, let's just close this Chrome driver. Okay, so if you observe over here, we have a list of items, right? So product item, and so on and so forth. There are multiple elements over here. Okay, so we need to verify, basically we need to verify that all the products are loaded, right? So we'll just write maybe let's say verify the display of products, right? So display of products on the page. Okay, right? So we'll use a list and we'll just mention elements over here, right? So we are basically creating a list of elements, right? So let's just say elements. Okay, we are basically creating list of elements, or we need to specifically mention which type of elements we need to talk about, right? So in this case, it will be a list of web elements. Okay, and let's call the list as products. Okay, right? So list of elements products equal to, all right, so we just mention equal to over here. We'll ask our Chrome driver to find elements. So earlier we were only finding a single element, right? This time what we'll do is we'll find multiple elements using a particular locator over here, right? So what is the locator? By, we need to use the XPath, where we need to find all the list elements based on the condition that their class equal to, and what is exactly the class over here? Product hyphen item. All right, so let's just copy it. In single quotes, we'll just mention product hyphen item. Okay, right? And we'll give a semicolon over here. All right, let's get back. So let's break down the syntax line by line. Okay, so we have written a list, and in Angular braces we have mentioned web element, which basically means we want to create a list of web elements, and we have given it a variable name called as products. We have told our driver to find the elements by XPath of the list class, product item, and all. Okay, so till now we've been using the driver.findElement method, right? So this basically finds a single element, whereas in our case we have used the findElements method, which basically means the findElements method will be used to look at multiple elements plural, right? So on a web page, it will identify multiple elements which basically match a given locator strategy, and it will return a list of web element objects altogether. Okay, and what we are doing over here is we are taking that list of web elements that match our relative XPath expressions, and we are storing them in a list of web elements called as products. Okay, and now all we need to do is we need to check if the product list is empty or not. Okay, so let's write the code for that as well. So what we'll do is we'll write if the condition is products.size of, right? So we'll just need to write products.size of is greater than 0. Okay, so what should we do? We need to print the system.out.println saying that products are displayed successfully on the products page. Okay, so we'll write system.out.println of, right? So let's say products are successfully displayed on the products page, and let's also mention that number of products as well. Okay, right? So let's say let's just write products dot size. Okay, we'll just print the size of the products over here. Okay, if this fails, if the if condition fails, let's do not forget the semicolon over here. Okay, so if the if condition fails, we need to write the else condition, right? So we'll write else. What should happen is we need to print a statement which says system.out.println. Okay, let's say no products found on the page. All right, so let's just close it and add a semicolon over here. Let's run the code and see what happens. So page opens, we log in, we navigate to the products page. Okay, right? And let's see. Products are successfully displayed on the products page and the total number of products is 57. Okay, right? Let's get back. So we successfully executed the code and we can see that the products are loaded successfully as well, right? Finally, let's add the quit method so that the browser is closed once the test is completed. Okay, let's go ahead with it. So all we need to do over here is close the browser after the test, right? Okay, and all we need to do is simply write driver.quit. Okay, and once we run this code, let's see what happens. So the browser opens, we are successfully able to log in, we navigate to the products page and the browser is also closed. Okay, let's get back. So this is how we were able to see the output. Okay, and on the whole, in today's session, we learned about locators.